Hey, thriller seekers. If heart-pounding tales of hidden horrors and unbreakable bonds keep you up at night, hit subscribe and dive into our vault of gripping stories. Fresh chills delivered every week to haunt your feed. It's a cold night in March 2012 when police respond to an emergency call from a distressed mother. She's found lying wounded beside the lifeless body of her boyfriend, the murder weapon still clutched in her hand. The scene is chilling, but the story behind it will unravel a tale of manipulation, betrayal, and revenge that no one saw coming. Sarah Johnson had married young, full of hope and dreams for the future. She and her ex-husband David had met in college and quickly fell in love. They were inseparable, and before they knew it, Sarah was pregnant with Lily. They got married soon after, believing they could handle anything as long as they were together. But life didn't go as planned. David was ambitious, always chasing the next big job or promotion. His career took off, but with it came long hours, frequent travel, and a growing distance between him and Sarah. As the years passed, David became more focused on his work, leaving Sarah to manage the household and raise Lily mostly on her own. The little things they used to share, like late-night talks and weekend outings, slowly faded away. Sarah tried to be patient, believing that once David's career stabilized, they would find their way back to each other. But instead, David became more withdrawn, often coming home late without explanation or spending weekends away on business trips. Sarah felt lonely, unappreciated, and more like a live-in nanny than a wife. One day, Sarah discovered a string of text messages on David's phone from another woman. The messages weren't just flirtatious. They were explicit, revealing a full-blown affair that had been going on for months. Sarah confronted David, and after a heated argument, he admitted to the affair but showed no remorse. Instead, he blamed Sarah for their growing distance, accusing her of not being supportive enough of his career. Devastated, Sarah decided she couldn't stay in a marriage where she was neither loved nor respected. The divorce was quick but bitter. David fought over everything: money, custody of Lily, even the house. In the end, Sarah was left with primary custody of Lily, a small monthly alimony check that barely covered the bills, and a mountain of debt. Now Sarah was a single mother, working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. The once comfortable lifestyle she had known was gone. She sold their house and moved into a small apartment, cutting back on every luxury she had once taken for granted. The stress was relentless, and her health began to suffer. She lost weight, her hair started to thin, and dark circles formed under her eyes from lack of sleep. Amid this chaos, Sarah met Michael Carter. It was a chance encounter at a local coffee shop where Sarah worked part-time. Michael was a regular customer, always polite and charming. He would chat with Sarah during his visits, and over time their conversations grew longer and more personal. He seemed genuinely interested in her life, and unlike David, he was attentive and caring. He noticed her struggles and offered to help, insisting that she deserved better. Michael was everything Sarah thought she needed. He was successful, confident, and seemed to genuinely care about her and Lily. After months of being strong for Lily, Sarah finally felt like she could let her guard down. Michael began to help with the bills and even bought gifts for Lily, quickly becoming a comforting presence in their lives. Sarah believed she had found her savior, someone who would make all the pain and struggle worthwhile. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would soon consume her life. In March 2010, just a few months after Sarah first met Michael, their relationship moved quickly. Michael, always the perfect gentleman, began to weave himself into Sarah and Lily's lives with ease. He would visit Sarah at the coffee shop every day, bringing her small tokens of affection: flowers, chocolates, or a book he thought she might like. For Lily, Michael would bring trendy clothes or the latest gadgets, knowing how much a teenage girl would appreciate them. He made sure that Sarah and Lily never had to worry about money again. By April, Michael was covering most of Sarah's bills. He insisted on paying for groceries, utilities, and even Lily's school fees. Sarah initially resisted, but Michael always had a convincing argument. "You've been through enough, Sarah," he would say. "Let me take care of you both. You deserve it." His kindness was overwhelming, and Sarah, exhausted from years of struggle, finally allowed herself to accept his help. As summer 2010 approached, Michael began to invite Sarah and Lily to his home more frequently. He lived in a large, beautifully decorated house in an affluent neighborhood. The house was a stark contrast to the small apartment where Sarah and Lily lived. Michael would host dinners, cook elaborate meals, and entertain them with stories of his travels and successes. The more time they spent with him, the more Sarah began to see Michael as the man who could finally give her and Lily the life they deserved. In August, after months of dating, Michael suggested that Sarah and Lily move in with him. He framed it as a practical decision. Why should they live separately when they could all be together, saving money and enjoying life as a family? Sarah hesitated at first, feeling that it might be too soon, but Michael's arguments were persuasive, and Lily, enchanted by the idea of living in such a luxurious home, was eager to move. By September 2010, they packed up their apartment and moved into Michael's house. At first, life seemed perfect. Michael was attentive, always making sure Sarah and Lily had everything they needed. He bought Sarah a new wardrobe, insisting that she deserved to look her best. For Lily, he purchased a car for her 18th birthday, something she had never dreamed of owning. They went on weekend trips, dined at expensive restaurants, and lived a life of comfort that Sarah had only ever imagined. However, as 2011 began, subtle changes started to occur. In January 2011, Michael began to show signs of controlling behavior. He started making decisions for Sarah and Lily without consulting them. At first, it was little things. He would order for them at restaurants or plan their weekends without asking what they wanted to do. But soon it escalated. He began monitoring Sarah's spending, questioning her about where she went and who she talked to. He would get upset if she spent time with friends or family without him. By February, Michael's demands became more intense. He insisted on knowing every detail of Sarah and Lily's day, criticizing them if they didn't follow his advice. He would become cold and distant if they didn't comply, using silent treatment as a form of punishment. He would make condescending remarks disguised as helpful advice, undermining Sarah's confidence in her own decisions. Despite these red flags, Sarah found herself rationalizing his behavior. She was so grateful for the life he provided that she ignored the growing discomfort in her gut. She told herself that Michael was just being protective, that he cared deeply for them, and that he only wanted what was best. The idea that she could lose this newfound security terrified her, so she pushed her doubts aside and convinced herself that everything was fine. Meanwhile, Michael's grip on Lily tightened as well. He would take her out on lavish shopping trips, buying her expensive clothes and jewelry. He would compliment her constantly, making her feel special and grown up. Lily, young and impressionable, soaked up the attention, not realizing the insidious nature of Michael's actions. Michael subtly isolated her from her friends, encouraging her to spend more time at home or with him under the pretense of being a father figure. By March, Michael had fully ingrained himself into their lives, his true nature slowly revealing itself. Lily had always been a quiet and shy girl, often unsure of herself and seeking approval from those she trusted. Michael saw this as an opportunity to manipulate her. Michael knew that Lily was eager to please him and her mother, so he began to test the boundaries of their relationship. He would give her long, lingering hugs, brush his hand against hers, and find excuses to be alone with her. Lily, confused by his behavior, didn't know how to react. She trusted Michael because her mother trusted him. She told herself that Michael was just being affectionate, that he cared for her like a father. But deep down, she felt uneasy. By August 2011, Michael's advances became more overt. He would corner Lily in the house when Sarah wasn't around, whispering things to her that made her uncomfortable. He would tell her that she was special to him, that their connection was something unique and private. One evening in September, when Sarah had gone out to run errands, Michael took his manipulation a step further. He sat Lily down in the living room and started talking to her about love and relationships. He told her that she was old enough to understand how the world worked, that sometimes people who care about each other can express that care in physical ways. Lily, sitting on the edge of the couch, felt her heart race. She didn't know what to say. Michael's words felt wrong, but she was too scared to disagree with him. Michael leaned closer, putting his arm around her shoulders. He told her that he loved her, that she was special to him in ways her mother couldn't understand. Lily, terrified and confused, nodded, not knowing what else to do. Michael took this as consent and started to kiss her. Lily froze, too afraid to push him away or say anything. Michael, sensing her fear, told her that it was okay, that he would never hurt her. But his words were empty, and Lily knew it. From that night on, Michael would continue to manipulate Lily into a twisted relationship, coercing her into sexual acts while making her believe that it was their secret, something that would hurt her mother if she ever found out. As the weeks went by, Lily became more withdrawn. She started to avoid Michael as much as she could, but he always found a way to corner her, to remind her of their special bond. By December, the vibrant girl she once was had disappeared. Lily barely spoke, her eyes always downcast, her body language closed off. She didn't know how to escape Michael's grasp, and the fear of disappointing her mother kept her silent. In May 2012, things took a darker turn. Michael's manipulation of Lily grew more intense. He would threaten to tell Sarah about their relationship, twisting the situation to make Lily believe that her mother would blame her, not him. He played on her insecurities, making her feel guilty and ashamed. Michael knew exactly how to keep her under his control, and Lily felt trapped. In July, Lily's fear reached a breaking point. She began to leave subtle hints for her mother, small cries for help that she hoped Sarah would notice. Lily would leave her diary open on her bed with vague entries about feeling lost and scared. She would make offhand comments about Michael's behavior, hoping Sarah would pick up on them. But Sarah, still blinded by Michael's manipulation and her own struggles, didn't see the signs. On a chilly evening in September, Sarah received a phone call from one of Lily's teachers at school. The teacher expressed concern, explaining that Lily had become increasingly distant and withdrawn over the past year. Sarah listened, her heart sinking as the teacher's words echoed in her mind. After the call ended, Sarah couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. Later that week, one of Lily's closest friends, a girl named Emily, pulled Sarah aside after picking Lily up from school. "Mrs. Johnson, is everything okay with Lily?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with worry. "She doesn't talk to us like she used to. It's like she's always on edge and scared of something." These conversations left Sarah deeply troubled. She began to notice patterns she had previously ignored: Lily's reluctance to engage in conversation, her avoidance of eye contact, the way she flinched at sudden movements. All of these signs started to come together in Sarah's mind. What if something terrible was happening to her daughter? What if Michael, the man she had trusted, was involved? One evening in November 2012, after Lily had gone to bed, Sarah decided to trust her instincts. She knew it wasn't right, but the fear gnawing at her was too strong to ignore. She picked up Lily's phone, which was lying on the kitchen counter, and began scrolling through her messages. Most of them were innocent conversations with friends, but then she stumbled upon a series of messages from Michael. Her heart pounded as she read them. One message stood out, sending a wave of nausea through Sarah. "You know what will happen if I tell your mom. She'll blame you, Lily, and kick you out. Is that what you want?" The words were like a dagger to Sarah's heart. The reality of Michael's manipulation crashed down on her like a ton of bricks. It was all true. Everything she had feared was happening right under her roof. Overcome with rage and guilt, Sarah confronted Lily the next morning. Lily, terrified and ashamed, broke down in tears and revealed the full extent of the horror she had endured. She told her mother how Michael had coerced her, how he had threatened her, and how she had felt powerless to stop him. Sarah listened in silence, her heart shattering with each word. The shock was overwhelming, but as Lily spoke, something inside Sarah snapped. The guilt of allowing this man into their lives, of not seeing the signs earlier, consumed her. But beneath the guilt, a dangerous determination began to brew. Sarah realized she couldn't let Michael continue hurting Lily or anyone else. He had to be stopped. As November wore on, Sarah's mind spiraled into a dark place. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were consumed by images of Michael's betrayal and Lily's suffering. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had to take matters into her own hands. She couldn't trust the police or the legal system to protect her daughter. They would only delay justice or, worse, fail to deliver it. No, Sarah had to act. She had to end this nightmare herself. Consumed by guilt and a burning need for revenge, Sarah began to meticulously plan Michael's demise. She started by studying his routines, noting when he left the house, where he went, and how long he stayed out. Michael was a creature of habit, which made it easier for Sarah to anticipate his movements. She learned when he would be most vulnerable, when he would be alone, away from prying eyes. In early December, Sarah began to gather the materials she would need. During the day, she would play the role of the devoted girlfriend, pretending everything was normal. But at night, she would lie awake, going over the plan in her mind, preparing herself mentally and physically for what had to be done. Sarah knew that she couldn't afford to make any mistakes. She couldn't allow Michael to suspect anything, or he might turn on Lily again. So she kept her emotions in check, masking her rage with a calm exterior. On the night of January 6, 2013, the clock struck midnight and the house was eerily silent. Michael was in his study, just as Sarah had anticipated. It was his nightly routine. He'd pour himself a glass of whiskey, settle into his leather armchair, and sift through his documents. Sarah knew this was her moment. She had rehearsed it countless times in her mind, but now, as she approached the study, the weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her. Sarah entered the room quietly, the knife hidden behind her back. Michael barely glanced up, too engrossed in his papers to notice her presence. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her face remained expressionless, her emotions locked away. She walked slowly, closing the distance between them. In one swift, decisive motion, Sarah brought the knife down into Michael's chest. His eyes widened in shock, but before he could react, she stabbed him again and again, each strike fueled by the anger and betrayal she felt. Blood splattered across the desk and the walls, but Sarah didn't stop until Michael slumped over, the life draining out of him. The room fell silent again, but the horror of what she had done began to sink in. Sarah stood over Michael's lifeless body, feeling an overwhelming mix of relief and emptiness. She had avenged Lily, but the reality of taking a life was almost too much to bear. Knowing she needed to cover her tracks, she made a calculated decision. Gripping the knife, Sarah stabbed herself in the side, ensuring the wound wasn't fatal but convincing enough to back her story. Breathing heavily, Sarah staggered to the phone and dialed 911. "Help, please, send help," she cried into the receiver, her voice trembling with practiced fear. "He attacked me. Michael, he tried to kill me." The operator assured her that help was on the way, but Sarah barely heard the words. She dropped the phone, collapsing to the floor beside Michael's body, waiting for the police to arrive. The police arrived within minutes, the flashing lights of their vehicles casting an eerie glow over the crime scene. They found Sarah slumped on the floor, her clothes soaked in blood, a deep gash on her side. Michael lay dead beside her, the knife still clutched in her hand. The scene was chaotic, but the story seemed clear enough. Sarah had acted in self-defense against a violent attack. Over the next several days, detectives began to piece together the events leading up to Michael's death. They interviewed Sarah, who recounted the night in harrowing detail, sticking to her story of self-defense. But it wasn't until they spoke to Lily that the full extent of Michael's manipulation and abuse came to light. Lily, though traumatized, managed to confirm the abuse she had endured at Michael's hands. She provided the investigators with the disturbing text messages Michael had sent her, revealing the threats and coercion he had used to control her. The detectives were horrified as they realized the depth of Michael's depravity and the terror he had inflicted on the two women. Michael had a close friend who was a renowned lawyer, and as the investigation progressed, the lawyer began to paint a different picture. He claimed that Sarah had planned the murder to gain control of Michael's assets, arguing that her injuries were self-inflicted to make it look like she had acted in self-defense. He dug up every piece of evidence they could find, trying to turn the case against her. The investigation became a battle of narratives. Was Sarah a desperate mother pushed to the edge by a predator, or a cold-blooded killer who had meticulously planned her crime? When the trial began in February 2013, the courtroom was packed with journalists, spectators, and legal experts, all eager to see how the case would unfold. The prosecution argued that Sarah had murdered Michael in cold blood, presenting the theory that she had orchestrated the entire situation to secure his wealth. They pointed to the fact that Sarah had been financially struggling and suggested she had used Lily as a pawn in her scheme. But the defense team fought back, presenting a canvas that painted Sarah as a victim of Michael's twisted games. They highlighted Lily's testimony, which detailed the horrific abuse she had suffered, and the text messages that showed Michael's manipulative nature. Sarah's own testimony was calm, detailed, and devastating. She described how she had discovered the truth about Michael, how she had been driven to protect her daughter at any cost, and how she had only acted in self-defense when he attacked her. The evidence was undeniable. The abusive messages, Lily's tearful recounting of events, and the history of Michael's control over their lives all pointed to a pattern of psychological torment that had pushed Sarah to the brink. The courtroom was tense as the trial drew to a close. The jury was left to decide whether Sarah was guilty of premeditated murder or if she had acted in a moment of desperation to protect herself and her daughter. After several days of deliberation, they returned with a verdict. Sarah was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, a charge that acknowledged she had taken Michael's life, but under circumstances that were provoked by his abusive behavior. The judge sentenced Sarah to 3 years in prison, a relatively lenient sentence given the circumstances. The court also awarded a significant settlement to Sarah and Lily, recognizing the trauma they had endured at Michael's hands. The money would help them rebuild their lives, though no amount could erase the scars left by the years of abuse. As Sarah was led away from the courtroom, she glanced back at Lily, who was watching her with tears in her eyes. Sarah knew that their lives would never be the same, but they had survived, and they would continue to survive, no matter what. As Sarah begins her prison sentence in March 2013, the town is left in turmoil, divided over the outcome of the trial. Some of the residents see her as a tragic figure, a mother who was driven to the brink by a manipulative predator, doing what any parent would in her situation. To them, Sarah's actions were justified, an act of desperation from a woman who saw no other way to protect her daughter. They spoke of her with a mix of sympathy and admiration, believing she had been unfairly punished for what they saw as an act of righteous vengeance. However, there were others who saw the situation differently. They believed that Sarah had taken the law into her own hands, committing a murder that should never be condoned. These voices were louder, accusing Sarah of being no better than Michael himself. They argued that no matter the circumstances, she had committed a crime and deserved to pay for it. As the town continued to debate Sarah's actions, the story lingered in the air, raising questions about justice, revenge, and the lengths a mother will go to protect her child. Could there have been another way for Sarah to save Lily without resorting to murder? Or was this the only way for her to reclaim control over their lives from Michael's terrifying grip? In March 2014, a year into her sentence, a shocking discovery came to light that would change everything. New evidence was uncovered that revealed Michael had a dark past, a history of abusing other families in much the same way he had abused Sarah and Lily. This wasn't the first time Michael had targeted a vulnerable woman and her daughter, manipulating them until they were entirely under his control. The evidence painted a picture of a serial predator, someone who had evaded justice for years, leaving a trail of broken lives in his wake. With this new information, the case against Sarah was re-examined. The evidence was clear. Sarah had not been Michael's first victim, and it was likely she would not have been his last. The discovery of Michael's previous crimes added weight to the argument that Sarah had acted out of genuine fear for her and her daughter's safety. In light of this, the court decided to reduce Sarah's sentence. After serving just over a year in prison, Sarah was released in July 2014. The town's opinion began to shift as more people learned the truth about Michael's past, though the divisions remained. When Sarah walked out of prison, Lily was there waiting for her. The reunion was bittersweet, filled with tears and relief. The trauma they had endured didn't disappear overnight, but with time, it began to fade. The compensation they received from Michael's estate provided them with the financial security they had long been denied, allowing them to rebuild their lives in peace. Slowly, they found a new rhythm, one that wasn't dominated by fear or manipulation. Sarah and Lily grew closer, their bond strengthened by the trials they had faced together. They moved to a new town, away from the memories of their past, and started a new life. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs to live without the shadow of Michael hanging over them. As they settled into their new lives, the lingering questions remained. Could anything have been done differently? Could the system have protected them before things escalated to such a violent conclusion? Or was Sarah's desperate act the only way to break free from Michael's control? The answers were elusive, but Sarah and Lily chose to focus on the future, determined to live the life they had fought so hard to reclaim.